So, thank you and good morning, everyone, for joining us today in this roundtable discussion on fostering green, affordable, and inclusive energy transition in impoverished region of Pakistan. And this has been jointly organized by Sustainable Development Policy Institute and United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Asia and Pacific. Yeah, just unfortunately, just because of some very tough weather conditions, we have been joined by a lot of panelists, as well as the discussants have been joined us online. So yeah, I think, but perhaps we're in a very good position to go forward. So my name is Ubaidur Rahman, and I will currently be moderating the whole roundtable today. And yes, so again, on behalf of all partner organizations, I welcome you all. But I think, but perhaps I just go to Dr. Hassan Daud for his formal welcome remarks. Let me just set some very brief housekeeping rules. Yes, so the event will not be, since this is a consultative discussion, we won't be streaming it live, but the session will be recorded, and you're always welcome to revisit these discussions. And for all of our online speakers, you're welcome to turn on your cameras while you're speaking, as long as your network allows to do so. So yeah, and we also invite questions from all of our audience here today, as long as you're coming towards that. So I think just coming towards the whole discussion, I think our whole the roundtable, once we actually start with it, will be actually divided into three different stages. Initially, we'll discuss the energy access and affordability, reliability challenges in the rural communities of Pakistan, especially in the backdrop of this whole CCC crisis, which we're actually going through, which includes the impacts coming in from climate change. We have seen some very disruptions in the whole energy value chain of Pakistan, especially because of some regional turmoils, as well as some disruptions coming in the power sector as well. So yeah, that's actually one of the very key themes, that because of this, the SDG mapping or SDG tracking of developing countries such as Pakistan has actually gotten off track as well. Then we'll actually be discussing some of the very off-grid community solutions, which are actually practically implementable in Pakistan, what challenges we're actually facing to implement these, and what should be, being a developing country, what should be the way forward with this. Thirdly, we do have so many experts from the financing sector as well. So we'll also be discussing what's the availability of financing, how we can include come up with different financing channels that can actually finance these, whether it's these are some of the startups, or as well as these off-grid community-based solutions as well, and what has already been done and what challenges are these sectors actually facing to go ahead. And lastly, through a collective effort, we're actually trying to carve out some of the very key policy recommendations that should be extended to all the relevant stakeholders on behalf of this roundtable and this platform. So I think without any further ado, I would hand it to Dr. Hassan Daud for his formally welcoming all the participants and his brief agenda setting as well. So yeah, over to you, Dr. Hassan. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ubaid. Thank you. And it's always so good to see all the champions of renewable energy and sustainability around energy gather and around one table. And I think this is very critical. And the most critical aspect for us in SDPI, and perhaps for the government, is perhaps the accessibility of clean, affordable energy. And when I say clean and affordable energy, I do not say as a matter of policy, but as a matter of human right, because this is now has become human ability to do things much beyond the requirement based on the energy sources that they have. And when we talk of energy, then please remember, when without energy, there will be very poor education. Without energy, the healthcare will be poor. Without education, the trade and businesses will be poor. And without energy, the yield that we require from our agriculture sector will never achieve its targets. So energy has a direct linkages with all the important human elements that we speak, not just in our SDGs goals setting, but also as perhaps the agenda of the government. So when governments prepare their manifestos, they talk about energy, but I think the most important critical aspect now is not just accessible energy, but also affordable, accessible, and clean energy. And these three things require resilient infrastructure. These things require investment and financing. The entire ecosystem has to be developed. And for that, I think people like us who sit in urban centers also need to trust the wisdom of rural communities. And sometimes we do not do that. We need to understand, and I give you an example. When I was setting up this solar system in my home, my driver came to me and he gave me solutions, because he said, for us, our tube wells have been run by solar energy for past 10 years. So our experience, our wisdom, and our cost of setting up that system is much cheaper to what you get in Islamabad and rest of the country in urban centers. So I think for us, when we make our policies and when we discuss this here sitting in Islamabad, we also need to involve some of the people from rural communities, especially working on agriculture sector, because now the government and all the policy makers and stakeholders are talking about energy security. We are talking about healthcare, and even to an extent, energy provides support in terms of gender equality also, because so many lives are lost because of these gas stoves that we have in our kitchen, especially in the rural community. So when we provide electricity to them, and when these new utensils become, I think a lot of lives will be saved in our kitchens also. So overall, I think it's not just a matter of social balance, but also a matter of industrialization. It's a matter of agriculture. It's a matter of economic growth and sustainability. And when we discuss this, we need to champion this together as a team, and as collective wisdom will produce better results. And therefore, we in SDPI look forward to the discussion today. We look forward to engaging questions that should come forward from all the participants. And I think this cross questioning around the table will give us the wisdom and concepts that are required, because our policy making, every government gives this in their manifesto, gives a few things as critical aspect: economic growth, revenue generation, accessible energy, cheaper energy. And if you look at manifestos of all the political parties, you'll see them. But how will we achieve this? Will happen only with people sitting across this table, and perhaps more as we grow more in our discussion. So I thank you all for being here. I know the weather was harsh today, but still you managed to come. And also, Michael, you are online. So thank you very much. And Amir Sahab and everyone who's here for their presence. And I'm excited to listen from you and make our policy recommendations for some of the government pillars are sitting here actually. So we do not have to forward them to anyone. We will just share with them the recording of today's session. So thank you very much.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Hassan. I think nothing but agree that we need to, come up with a people-centric approach in the whole transition process. Like humanity or people needs to be at the center stage or the center focus. So yeah, I think Dr. Hassan, we do have some very exactly like you pointed out, we do have some champions of change sitting here as well with ADB, PPAF, and all the other organizations that have done some amazing work in this sector as well. So yeah, we're really looking forward to hear from them. I think, yes, yeah, but again, coming to the most important one, I think we do have coming towards Michael. Michael is currently the Section Chief of Energy Division at UNSCAP, and SCAP has been, I think, but extremely instrumental in the energy sector of reforms. There are a lot of work done around that, especially in the last year when in collaboration with PPIB and SDPI, UNSCAP developed the SDG 7 roadmap for Pakistan. And I think that, Anis is here as well. So yeah, I think that's actually one of the very important documents that put significant light on this aspect as well. So yeah, with this, thank you so much, Michael, for joining us today. And yes, over to you for your official opening remarks in this. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, Ubaid, and greetings to everybody. It's wonderful to see so many experts in the room. This is a great partnership that we're continuing with SDPI, and I really want to thank SDPI not just for this process that we're embarking on now, but for the previous cooperation we've had in producing the SDG 7 roadmap for Pakistan. And this is now a very important follow-up, one of several follow-ups we're doing. We're also working with Dr. Khalid and Maz on this wonderful study on the phase down of coal. We're also talking about SDC towards the end of the year. So the partnership is continuing, and that is very good. So the topic that we're confronting today is a very complex one, and that's why I'm glad to see so many experts in the room, because we need all of these contributions of different thinkers and different disciplines to come up with some of the solutions. Well, what I want to do in my opening really is to reflect on why is this topic so important? And to really understand that question, we can go back to the 2030 agenda when it was promulgated in 2015. It said, leave nobody behind. This is the core message that cuts through all of the 17 sustainable development goals. We should leave nobody behind. And that really is the core part of the discussion about the underprivileged regions of Pakistan. If we drill down to SDG 7, of course, this is the guiding part of the Sustainable Development Agenda that relates to sustainable energy. When I look at SDG 7, I really see it as a fusion of three different elements. There is certainly an element on climate action when we talk about renewables and energy efficiency in terms of their CO2 mitigation potential. But there is also an energy productivity component, which says that energy is an important commodity with an opportunity cost, and we should use it as efficiently and as sparingly as possible. But the third part is a social justice angle, which says that energy is a core component of human development, and everybody should have access to modern energy services. So that's why it's a really interesting and multifaceted SDG in my view, that it tries to encapsulate these three very different elements. And of course, as Dr. Hassan Daud has just pointed out, energy is fundamental in energy society. It sits at the bottom of the pyramid of so many different services and human needs and economic needs. So without energy, we don't have anything. And if we think of ourselves living in our modern lives in modern houses with heating and cooling, we take it for granted because it's there with us every day. But the moment you go to a village where you don't have access to electricity or other modern energy services, you realize its absence. You don't have pumped water, you don't have lighting, you don't have mobile phones and communications. So it's only through this absence that you experience how important it is. And that's why we'll be discussing these topics today. But I wanted to talk a little bit about inequality, because of course, inequality is a problem around the world. So we talk about inequality in terms of the gap between the rich and poor within countries, but also between countries. So the rich are getting richer, the poor are even going backwards or are staying still. So this is a concern because inequality is fundamentally wrong from a human justice point of view, but it doesn't serve the interests of broader humanity. So to live in a world of growing inequality is not one where we can have a sustainable future, where we can have harmony within societies. And ESCAP, for its part, has been working continuously on this topic of inequality. We've been talking about the reform of taxation systems. We've been talking about social protection, a number of measures that countries can take to tackle inequality. And of course, the famous book by Thomas Piketty, Capital in the 21st Century, talked about this. And the theory put forward by Piketty is that over time, the rate of growth on capital exceeds economic growth. So the very simple way to put that is those who have capital can see their capital increase over time, and those who rely on getting richer through wages tend to stagnate, and this process accentuates over time. So I guess this talk about the Sustainable Development Goals and inequality brings us to renewables. And in fact, renewables are a potential solution to poverty, to inequality, and climate change. In fact, I think the really important thing about renewables is it's a paradigm shift in terms of energy. It turns the old model on its head. So instead of buying energy and converting it to useful purposes, we're using the energy that is free all around us. And what we need is the equipment. We need solar panels, or we need wind turbines or biogas. And in fact, it's the access to that equipment and the capital to purchase that equipment which is most important. So renewables unplugs us from many of the disadvantages of fossil fuels. And I think now we've been talking about polycrises, and in the concept note for this event, it talked about the multiple crises that Pakistan is facing, which are in addition to the global crises that all of us are feeling. So as we are managing these different polycrises, we're learning one thing, which is that renewables, in fact, are a solution to many of the problems that we're facing, whether we're talking about import dependence of energy, price volatility, whether we're talking about CO2 mitigation or grassroots economic development, or even recovery from events like COVID-19, renewables can play a role across all of these crisis management. And I think that aspect of renewables really puts into focus the importance of the questions that you've raised. How do we harness the benefits of renewable energy for those who need it the most? How do we actualize this progress on the ground? And I think we can argue that after a century of fossil fuel development, there's a very strong argument that says the major benefits of fossil fuel energy, of modern energy as we call it, has accrued to those with the wealth. And I think underprivileged people have missed out to a large extent on the benefits that fossil fuels have brought on humanity. Now we're experiencing the second wave of the fossil fuel damages in terms of the climate change damage. That burden, that impact is sitting on the shoulders of those who are most disadvantaged. So it's important that we don't continue along this rut, we avoid this pitfall. And I think as we embrace renewables and we look at unlocking the benefits of renewables, getting people to climb that ladder of opportunity, we really need to think about this renewable energy revolution. How do we bring the benefits to the people who are most in need of it? So I thank you very much for the opportunity to join you and pass the floor back to Ubaid.
Yes, thank you so much, Michael. I completely agree with the points about, all the angles you highlighted: social justice, energy justice, environmental justice. And I think I completely agree that renewable energy has to be the way forward. Perhaps if we fully understand, we do have these constraints when you talk about these extension of this national grid. But I think there are a lot of options and opportunities exist, particularly when we're talking about these community-based models as well. I think I'm just linking your interventions with some of the discussions which we're actually planning to have here today as well about the energy access. So I think if I quote a couple of sources, one is the SDG 7 roadmap we developed. There's a PSLM survey of Pakistan, as well as I think World Bank just recently conducted this study on energy access. So I think when we talk about that figure, which we actually have to go, what is the energy access of Pakistan? Generally, it all comes down to different tiers where we're actually talking about. I mean, if we just talk about anyone that has any sort of access to energy, whether it's perhaps a 100 ampere battery with a very small solar plate as well. So when we talk about those numbers, the figures even reach up to perhaps 1 to 94%. But when we actually talk about the access to reliable grid electricity, the number kind of drops about. I mean, we do come to a figure that actually quotes that like around 75 to 77% of the population has access to that grid electricity. And I think just again, Anis is also here, so I'll just quote some of the figures from the SDG 7 roadmap, Pakistan Anis, that based upon the analysis, it is estimated that the overall access of electricity in Pakistan would actually reach 100% by 2027. But again, we're talking about the very basic tier level. And when we talk like universal access to, when we talk about the clean cooking and these few technologies, the figure is actually drops down to like, it's almost like 50% of the population has access to these modern fuels and technology. So again, it remains a challenge that how you actually have to, for the countries, I mean, very big population of around 40% who will still rely on polluting cooking fuels and these technologies by 2030. So I think just setting the agenda statement is that a very well-planned and concerted effort is actually required to achieve the universal access of electricity, that electricity as well as when you talk about these clean cooking fuels as well. So very well-planned concerted effort is required in that space. So I think with this, I'll be actually moving towards a roundtable discussion. We do have a couple of colleagues here. I think, in fact, before that, we'll actually be coming to Mr. Amir Zafar Durrani. Saab is currently working as the president of RE Energia for his keynote address on the topic. And Amir Saab has been working a lot on these utility scale models of Pakistan as well. So yeah, Amir Saab, are you with us? Yeah, over to you, Amir Saab.
Well, good morning and thank you very much, everybody. And I think I would like to share my screen about if that's possible. Can I do that?
You can share it. We're just allowing, so perhaps you have to just very briefly. Yes, you can share it.
Okay. Can people see my screen?
It's not in the slides clear mode. We can see the screen. Yes, it's perfect now.
Okay, so, thank you very much. And I think after all the introductions and what Hassan said, and considering that I see Nafis sitting there, Darjat sitting there on the round table, a lot of what I'm going to talk about is going to be in two parts, just to lay what I thought we were going to talk about. And that is, the first part is going to be kind of regurgitating what I think we've already heard earlier in the introductions about why the need is there, but I think we would like to put a kind of a local spin on it. And the second part is something which I think both Darjat and Anis have at point been my clients in PPAF and in AKRSP. So I will have to repeat some of the stuff that we learned together for the audience who doesn't know these facts. So first, I was actually quite struck by the title of the presentation when I was asked to speak about it. It says, Fostering Green, Affordable and Inclusive Energy Transition in Impoverished. I think the word impoverished has been, I would take exception to that. It's a long debate, but I would rather call it unserved and underserved regions of Pakistan. And this follows from what you were just talking about. Everybody has different figures. So, but really, it's important to define energy poverty. And I think, again, the two speakers before me were pretty eloquent on this. But let's understand that energy poverty is actually the lack of access to modern energy sources, mainly electricity. And I will keep harping on this point, mainly electricity, and refers to the bare minimum energy sources needed to survive. Now, before I go into this 15-20 minutes that I'm given, I want one thing very clear for some of you who want a dose of reality on how far we can go with the renewable energy revolution. Need to be looking at Helen Thompson, I think from Cambridge, who talks about equity of energy act. So there's a lot of work done on where we're heading. And I take from the last point made where before you from the gentleman from UNESCAP that we people who had access to quality fuels actually had a higher quality of life. But one thing we can never forego is that the world moved over 1,000 years to denser fuels. Denser fuels really got us to the kind of bang per buck that we were able to make the progress that as collectively as human beings we have. So that debate is going to rage until I think cleaner nuclear solutions are not around. So therefore, please do not by any means think that I am a non-pragmatic proponent with my eyes wide shut, or eyes shut actually, when I talk about energy. So the other thing important is that the theme today should be less poor people. I think it should be more energy poverty, because I think they're very interlinked. So going forward, I mean, these are things you've all seen. Some are old, some are new. But really, we're looking at 1 billion plus people, with 3/4 of them rural and women affected more. That's the bottom line. And the reason I'm regurgitating these facts is it's just kind of good to get a jolt in the morning before we all start arguing about the facts. Now, we've heard about the ST7, the Energy for All, and the whole idea of how, like some years ago, the entire focus on solar. But really, why is reaching universal access still a challenge? And with Ubaid, the numbers you've given, we've challenged my alma mater, World Bank. I mean, I was a part of the peer review panel. I really challenged some of the findings. But remember, those findings have to be challenged not because they're wrong, but because of the questions that were asked. So if you ask the question that you want to show, what, as you rightly said, somebody has a battery or, a high voltage line goes over their head. I've always had problems grappling with this energy access issue, but we'll talk about that later. Now, what are the challenges? In grid-based electricity, we know that we have a lack of sufficient power generation capacity globally. We have poor transmission distribution infrastructure, which is really actually not much technological change has happened in almost a century on this between the DC and the AC systems that are promoting and transmitting long distance electricity. The high cost of supply to remote areas, obviously, because of their partly because of the sparseness of population. There is simply a lack of affordability in informal settlements, etc. Now, again, similarly, one can say there are challenges in off-grid electrification, which is something I will talk a lot more about today. Poor policies, inadequate regulations, there's lack of institutional planning and support. And you'll find me harping on a lot of this. If you look at community-led off-grid electrification, you find the maintenance is an issue. You find products are not standardized. There is an absence of financing, but that's what we are here to talk about. So achieving 100% electrification really is a game of politics, policies, governance, and technology. And we'll come to this as we go along. But what the good news is that those of us who are very much sold to distributed energy resources for the last, since at least the last 15 years of my life, we do believe that, if you start looking at stats, and these are old stats, 2017, 19, and the new ones somehow we have not seen from IRENA. But basically, the number of people served by off-grid globally has expanded 6-fold since 2011. The capacity has seen a 3-fold increase. But the greatest news, and I think this is something that, in terms of utilization, 80% of this off-grid being generated goes into some form of productive use. And, that again is a fantabulous bit of news because, just look at Pakistan's utilization patterns on the central grid. It's primarily household. And I think that a lot of problem lies within there. But then scaling up off-grid solutions, it requires thinking about more than just electricity itself. I'll try and move this. Yeah, here it goes. So, to accelerate this, and because we're talking of green energy transition, so let's talk about it. It's a game which is not limited to just thinking about who has electricity or not. It is a game that when I should talk about the money, the financing models, the institutional frameworks, how to build the capacity of the people to do this. How do we have the right policies and regulations? The challenge right now, Pakistan has almost anti-off-grid policies and regulations. We have to look at the technologies available to us. And believe me, when we talk of giving access to the underserved and unserved, they really deserve the latest technology, not the technology that's already been utilized for the last 50 years is now, in pretty much inefficient. We also, by the way, have to talk about, cross-sectoral linkages. Okay. So, essentially, the more I read about this, we all know that to meet the 7th SDG, energy access to all, a lot of people predict that grid modernization really is going to be a move to distributed generation, whether connected to or not connected to the grid. And that's really the future of electricity. It's a growing market. I'll skip this, an old slide. But here is where I would like to spend a little bit of time. Now, I prepared the slide. I think it is 2019. I was speaking in Sri Lanka. Actually, I was running a 4-day course for some of the people there in the energy sector. But really, I mean, one of the biggest problems to having clean energy access in the underserved and unserved areas, in rural areas, and we're going to say in Pakistan, but generally, has been this like, like the Waiting for Godot. I don't know how many people have seen that play, but it's like, it shall come if you wait long enough. Everywhere we go, we find some policymaker, some dumb bureaucrat really telling these people, yeah, this is nice. You have a small off-grid solution, but the real grid is going to be here. Now, it's if I was born, I mean, I am 58, but assuming 40 years now in all sorts of work, I have for 40 years seen this promise being made and being broken. So that is almost half a century of broken promises. So really, I wanted to understand what is behind this. Why is the grid not getting here? Now, I'm going to take an example from a study that was conducted in South Africa, because in Pakistan, we think our power sector woes are bad, but South Africa really has it multiplied by 5. So this is 2019. South Africa's power sector debt at that time was 27 billion US dollars, what we call Gardishi Karza, circular debt, which is the most dumb thing I've ever heard. There's nothing circular about it, but Pakistan's was at that time was about 10 billion US dollars. So at that time to connect a household, if South Africa embarked, was 9 years to the grid, right? It gets horrifying. Cost to connect a household to a grid is 1,500 US dollars. This is, again, South African estimates for 2019. Cost to connect 70 million missing energy millions is about $15 billion. This was for Pakistan, because that was my estimate in 2019. Now, time to connect these MEMS, I mean, it's a quarter of a century and almost triple the cost. This would like be adding, if it was done like this in 1 second, it would add a quarter more to Pakistan's external debt. So really, grid, we have to start thinking about it. Is this really grid alone? Or, we have to find new ways of improving energy transition, energy access, clean energy access. So this then brings us to the most interesting of all topics, the vicious circle of poverty and electricity and growing local economies. So the nexus between sustainable power and growing local economies, and I think Hassan, in his opening, talked about this. He said that, it is really the core for local development. And I believe that, and I mean, I have believed that. It's just that people don't understand. I mean, how many of you must have seen dumb health strategies prepared in areas where there is not 24-hour strategies? How many of you have seen vaccines going waste, aid going waste, food going waste, simply because of the absence of reliable electric power? So basically, no water, no sanitation, no health, no education, no agriculture, no industry, no security. In fact, no development is possible without basic access to energy. I do repeat that, and I always read that particular line out, because it really, and again, there is the symbiotic relationship between access to energy and your growth. So let's look at Pakistan. And I think the title impoverished comes from a mind block that we all have, which is that we say the poor cannot afford electricity. And I think the most amazing thing is, if you look at Pakistan, that you talk about these people. By the way, MEMS means the missing energy millions in Pakistan. Is the terminology I used to use a lot, but now I don't, because people find it vulgar, but I find nothing vulgar in it. So this is a 2017 number. If you look at it, poor in Pakistan traditionally spending about 2.3 billion annually. This, by the way, also came from a World Bank SMAP survey at that time. So in other words, spending on lighting by families living off grid alone is 2.3 billion per year in candles and kerosene alone. So if we, and I'm not going to spend time, but really we look at what the point being, and I'm stressing it again and again and again. It's been a long time, but let me say it again. So essentially, lack of access to affordable energy, lack of understanding of energy, low willingness to pay, low productivity, low capacity, results in no money. And therefore, again, this cycle, this is the vicious cycle of energy poverty. Whereas if you were to break this, you're going to look at what I call the virtuous circle of breakout of energy poverty: is increased access, increased productivity, increased sales, profit, increased incomes. It means money to buy energy. So therefore, as I say, be careful when you go out and you do these ability to pay, willingness to pay service in these areas, because do you even know that they have no idea what it means to have 24/7 energy? It is just a fantabulous thing. It's like their minds don't understand. It's like a child that's never played with electricity. And believe me, that is true. So what are the lessons, some of the lessons we have learned? And, again, I think some of this, Jat and I feel very, how should I say, violently passionate about. So basically, improving energy access is the need of the hour, we understand, but despite fluctuations in demand. So, the thing is, everywhere this recession is going to come, we're always going to be in some sort of crisis, but really, energy access has to be priority number one, because from security and justice to basic development and health, and we'll give you some examples coming down. And the idea is that most of what we have learned, and when the policymakers, they look at these small mountain communities, like in Pakistan, they look at how variation flows happen, they look at water flows, they look at suboptimal design, and they say, no, this is not the solution. But what they need to be saying is that these NGOs, these communities cannot do it alone. We need to bring some scale into this discussion. So basically, the problem therefore rises that, and then the second part of the debate on, they don't have the ability to pay. Actually, the whole thing is a vicious circle. There is a dire need to uplift lives, minds, and means of these households. There are two parts of this equation. One is increment in communities' financial wealth, and then the enabling capacity increases and the community awareness, understanding the externalities of not paying for clean energy. So, and we all know those health externalities, etc. But if you were to aggregate the spread of distributed energy resources, distributed grids, there are efficiencies to be gained through scales. There are huge amount of social environmental benefits on this. There's a huge amount of social value and carbon point credits to be sold in the global market. But this will require, and this aggregation, and I'll talk a little bit more about it, we have to try to do this aggregation simply because otherwise a lot of the technology infusion that is needed in bringing access to these distributed grids to these communities and the finance and subsidies that are required, that discussion would never happen. I'm going to give you a simple example. Let's take Ghana. This is a study spanning 05-13, basically where we saw that rural electrification in Ghana actually raised incomes, increased welfare, and had distributional impact. So, somebody would say, Amir, we all know that. Well, it's nice to see some case studies once in a while. I'm going to skip this part. So let us see what really happens. And, for some of you who are part of the Pakistani policymaking apparatus, I'm going to give you an example. And, the PPF gave us this opportunity, although it's unfortunate they have not been able to implement this study to date. However, I think sooner rather than later. But this is an example of how you would take something like what I've just talked about and how access is increased very quickly. And we'll take Hunza as an example. So Hunza, as we know, and I'm going to take just 5 more minutes. We're going to run through this very fast, but in fact, I think I will skip this. So, we did a send, but let me show you what we came up with, but some facts quickly, because I see that I have only 2-3 more minutes left. So, when you look at supply and demand in this very the footfall here, it's a beautiful area of Pakistan. I don't know, 200,000 tourists go there. And the number is now rising to millions. It still has 17 megawatts of shortfall in winters, 8 megawatts in summers, 14 hours of load shedding, and whatever else they have there, it still has diesel generation. And the other amazing thing is, look at the amount of wood consumed. So this is wood consumption. So what is that? That is multiple axes. Again, look at the amount of LPG consumed. And we are looking at about 7,000 plus tons of wood consumed per household in the winter season. Alarming. Again, skip. Let me just go there. And just to make a point, yeah. So this particular valley, and this is again my last 3-4 slides, which I wanted to sort of close on. Hunza, for example, as a district, if you look at utilizing distributed energy resources in terms of improving energy access, we realized that neither solar alone, neither hydro alone, neither wind alone will solve the problem. In fact, a combination of various hybrid renewable energy resources, including storage, whether that be water-based storage or otherwise, is really what is going to tickle this for us. So to close what we talked about, I know I went very fast, but the idea was to get a few points across. Setting electricity markets to lower energy poverty should be our priority. This part of this priority, I think, where we at a policy level need to be very, very clear. Electricity as a single source at household level. This really is where I think we need to start rethinking multiple sources of energy at a household level. I mean, I think most of the people sitting around here are using at least natural gas, which is piped to your house, and you're using electricity, and you're using a mix of other formats of generating your own electricity behind the meter. Some people have UPSs, storages. Now, the point is the world, by and large, has now made up their mind that unless we move to a single point of single mode of energy, which is in this case, we're talking electricity, we will not be able to bring about clean energy access. The other important thing is that, you know, we really have to start talking about virtually aggregated distributed generation portfolios, distributed energy portfolios that really focus on generating from not just a source. I think, again, I will say something that, you know, everybody should be familiar with. How many times do we find government, even today, the government is doing it again, you know, they say, oh, let's solarize all the buildings. Well, hey, guys, I mean, you know, the solution lies not just in solar, the solution lies in multiple sources, working in hybrid. And yes, today, with all the technology we have, it is now becoming quite very, very efficient and effective, but that you can actually marry multiple sources and have a stable grid. And, you know, especially if you have a localized grid. The last point I think is going to hurt, especially because I want to talk in context of Pakistan. We need in Pakistan to accelerate access. We need to decommission bad power. And I think we all understand what bad power is. But I think one of the things Pakistan is not really doing is really starting to play the what I call the energy, electricity, and metrology nexus. With the current technologies available, you know, and the reason I want this to be sort of dug into people's minds is that when we talk in Pakistan, everyone about renewables, adopting renewables, clean energy, distributed energy grids, everything, people say, oh, but how are we going to take care of the base load? So, you know, the problem is that, you know, we have available to us you know, a substantial amount of water power, and water-based power, hydropower, is something where Pakistan particularly has to balance the act between supply for farming and irrigation purposes and that for power generation. And, you know, if you were to use metrology and AI prediction on weather a little better, we would be in a win-win situation, and we could decommission a lot of our fossil-based work very, very fast. But, you know, at the end, don't forget that with RE, with renewable energy, come people's choices, and therefore energy independence is inevitable. So I think it's time to start adapting our traditional systems. So before I close, I think all of you have seen these cartoons, but I think as an independent thought provoker, I always say the debate on electricity through renewables like solars and others, and the way they are delivered to consumer carries the same control mentality that has made life on Earth so unsustainable. You see, the problem I see in really letting the renewables take over the world is unless they are corporatized, we all will not get energy access. But, you know, that's just the reality of the life we live in. And so thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. It's been a pleasure. And thank you, Brad and STPI.
Yes, thank you so much, Mesab, for again being very candid and openly highlighting the challenges that you mentioned. I think I would like actually some of the very important houses sitting over here to respond to those challenges, as well as some of the very important recommendations made by Mesab as well. Yes, Mesab, again, thank you for all this, and also taking us to a very important case of Humza as well and giving all these recommendations. I think the floor, we'll try to discuss those in the floor here as well. But I think before I actually go to, response as well as the key interventions to be highlighted by AEDB, we have been joined by Ms. Aisha Khan, who's the Chief Executive of Civil Society Coalition for Climate Change. So, Ms. Aisha, I think perhaps is Ms. Aisha here? Yes, thank you. So, Ms. Aisha, we'd also like you to highlight some of the challenges that you think are currently there for some these low-income regions regarding affordability and availability of accessibility of energy, and how do you actually think civil society playing a very important role in this? So, over to you, Ms. Aisha. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Obaid, and thank you, SDPI, for inviting me. I think I'll start out by saying congratulations to you and your team for taking the great initiative for setting up the Networking for Clean Energy Transition in January 2021. I think that was a very timely move because it brought together all the stakeholders and it has produced a very concrete set of recommendations. If we only follow those step by step, I think a lot of the issues that we're discussing here will be addressed because that report was fairly comprehensive and very robust and forward-looking in its vision. But talking about energy, I think the World Bank report states unequivocally that it is the largest single economic drain on our economy. And most of it actually comes from the transport and industry sector, but the domestic energy use, be it 17%, is also extremely vital. So when we talk about transition to clean energy, I think we need not think about our NDC, the nationally determined contribution commitments, but we need to think of it as a good business case for us because the cost of renewables has now gone down and the benefits, if you look at the economic benefits, if you look at the social benefits, if you look at the environmental benefits and put all those costs together, you will see that it is the way forward. And we must adapt and embrace new technologies to make this transition. The only question is, as previous speakers have said, how do we ensure that this transition is just and fair, it's affordable, and it reaches the last mile of people living in remote areas who are usually marginalized. As you know, and those who are familiar with my work, which may not be many sitting in this room, I work with mountain communities. So I have a very good idea of power outages and off-grid communities and how they live. For them, lack of electricity is not just sitting in the dark when the sun goes down. It means decreasing opportunity for them. It means depriving them of upward mobility because when they have power, electricity, there's so many other productive uses of renewable energy that can come in handy. Two maybe small examples that I give you is, time for homework after sundown, especially for the girl child. She cannot step out of the house or go somewhere else. So her education suffers. She does not have the same number of hours that she can put in her education and her future growth potential. The same goes for women who work during sunlight hours in the fields, but who at night have started small enterprises and need electricity to continue. And they are unable to utilize this. So I think that, for these communities, it is very, very essential that we provide them with off-grid, with renewable, with options so they can also have an equal opportunity. I think one of the previous speakers talked about equity, and equity is something that we need to always keep in mind when we are building strategies, when we are making policies. We have to build them on the principles of social, ecologic, economic, and democratic equity. That is the only thing that will actually make transformative change. With rural communities living in remote areas, the problem is also that other than being unserved, underserved, they have to cope with different disasters, different calamities, different emergencies. And if they are not connected, they suffer greater losses of life and damage to limited assets and property. we have the Alternative Energy, Renewable Energy Board. We have World Bank reports. We have the NSET report. So I think there's no shortage of knowing what needs to be done. The main issue that we need to address right now is how. And what we know from our own energy mix is that currently it's heavily reliant on fossil fuels. We have a low mix of hydropower. We have hardly any, barely 1% of renewable energy. But we do have vast resources. We have something like 340 gigawatts of wind energy that is available to us. We have the highest insolation values from 8 to 9 hours of sunshine every day. We have 60,000 megawatts of potential for developing hydro, of which we have only tapped 7,000 so far. But with water, let me say, we need to be careful. We invest in heavy infrastructure, large dams, at a cost for poor agriculture, because 90% of that water goes to agriculture. And with climate change, hydrological changes in flow patterns, if the water is not there, as the scientific reports are saying, in the next 30 or 40 years, we're not going to be able to use that resource. So we need to start thinking ahead. Recently, I read that there was a merger between the Alternative Energy Development Board, the AEDB, and the Private Power and Infrastructure Board, the PPIB. So we hope that this merger will pave the way to enhance operational efficiency, because that is what is lacking right now. And it will also support facilitation for investors and open like one window operations to take this process forward. What is happening in Pakistan now, due to lack of this energy poverty, as it was aptly stated by the former speaker, I think we are widening disparity. We are increasing inequality, and we are deepening the vulnerability of the already vulnerable population. And this means, high risk for women, for children, and for the elderly people. I think a few months ago, the World Bank also launched the Country Climate Diagnostic Report, the CCDR, in which it says, again, very unequivocally, that the social capital of Pakistan is extremely poor. So when you mix that with the economic decline and the ecological degradation and impacts of climate change, that means that we are facing a very precarious future. So I am very clear in my mind, and thanks to you, SDPI, and for making me part of the NSET as well, for raising my level of awareness, that we need to look for energy security beyond our borders as well. We are part of South Asia. We are part of SAARC, where every other country is part of the Energy Security Pact, barring Pakistan. So we need to look at other options, because business as usual is no longer an option for us. It says that in our national security policy as well, that we need to change. And when we talk about adaptation, we are now living in the age of adaptation. So adaptation essentially means changing with the needs of the time. And the need of the time is that we need to think green, we need to act green, and we need to phase out dirty fuels, and we need to prepare for a new green future. And women in energy will have to be an integral part of this system. They have to be part of planning, policy development, and implementation strategy. And for the rest, I think there is not much more for me to say, because I will refer all the participants actually to go back and read the position paper that you have already prepared. And that is so comprehensive in its detail and recommendations that all we need to do is now start working towards achieving some of the targets. And all we need to do is to select some priority goals for ourselves, because we have a habit of making our policies highly ambitious. Which is a good thing. One should always aim high, but then within that, there should be some priority areas with timelines that we should aspire at least to achieve those goals. Our main issue becomes not what, but how, and that how is connected to resources, it's connected to technology, it's connected to capacity. So we need to think of how we can develop the right kind of bankable proposals that can give us access to finance to be able to transition towards a just transition. Thank you, Beth.
Yes, thank you so much, Ms. Aisha, for your wonderful remarks and also highlighting the role that NSETEC would actually play. Yeah, just a very brief update to everyone. We are also thinking of developing this regulatory sandbox under the NSET, where each recommendation or the policy recommendation or the way forward, we're actually proposing, we aim to generate a debate on each of these points just to make sure that, yeah, well, okay, let's just sit in a room and decide whether this point should go ahead, whether this policy recommendation should go ahead or not. So, I mean, again, I can assure you that we'll keep knocking the doors along with you, Ms. Aisha. So, yeah, let's hope, I mean, all the recommendations coming on that side as well. So, I think Ms. Aisha has already set a very good scene, and we do have some of the experts. So, perhaps you can initially start with Ms. Aisha also pointed out some of the things about perhaps with Keel Jafri sir, who's currently working as the Director of Policy at Alternate Energy Development Board. I think Keel sir, Amit Saab have also raised some of the points, some of the recommendations and challenges. And Ms. Aisha has also highlighted some of these points and perhaps also highlighting the points you mentioned on the potential merger of PPIB and AEDB. So yeah, over to you. Perhaps if you could just highlight that in this broader theme, what is currently being done, perhaps, and any other interventions that you would like to highlight on this one. Yeah, so over to you, Aziz. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Matt. First of all, it's a pleasure to be here today in this roundtable discussion. And I think,
yes, it's a.
I think Amit Saab and Natasha have very precisely covered and elaborated the issues when it comes to energy access, and they have put forward very precise recommendations, which I support. And as mentioned, that recently we have had the merger of PPIB and ADB as part of the reforms within the government sector, and which will certainly pave the way forward for the promotion and development of renewable energy technology and make this organization, combined organization, a true one window facility for the private sector. I think government, as everyone knows, that the government has already set the target to increase the share of renewables in the grid mix by 2030, targeting 30% from renewables and overall a 60% share from clean energy, including hydro. And that transition is not just due to our commitments at the global level in the form of SE for all or global commitments towards mitigation action for climate change. This is the only option we have if we are to achieve energy access, energy security, and make the electricity more affordable for every consumer in the country. But when we talk about energy access for all, we have to think big. Targeting a share of renewables in the grid is one thing, but renewables are the way forward for providing energy access, and that I think Amit Saab very precisely mentioned that going forward, microgrids and such solutions and hybrid solutions are the best possible way to provide energy access to the population living in the marginalized area of Pakistan. When we talk about, the main issue of the marginalized area, and when we talk about poverty elevation, it is mainly linked with overcoming the energy poverty. The three main needs of these areas, people living in these areas, are healthcare facilities improved, or rather missing education facilities and job creation. And one thing that links all of these is the provision of energy access. So if we can provide energy access, we can improve the healthcare facilities, we can improve education facilities, we can create job opportunities for the communities living in those marginalized areas. So the way forward, and we have had the global examples wherein now renewables are playing their role in providing energy access. Microgrids, mini grids was a decade ago that seemed to be a dream because it was considered not affordable, not sustainable. But now we have examples of like a 400 megawatt isolated or microgrid system being set up in Saudi Arabia with a battery backup of 1.3 gigawatt hours that can provide 24/7 electricity to the dedicated community. So we have the technology available with us, and with hybrids, where we have different sources of renewable sources available, like hydro and wind coupled with solar, we can easily provide solutions that can provide an energy access to these areas. Because when we talk about energy access and the rising electricity prices in the urban areas, bear in mind that in most of the marginalized communities, they pay almost double the price we are paying for energy access, even now. So maybe these renewables and alternative solutions are much cheaper and a reliable source of energy and electricity supply for them. But the most important thing when we talk about going forward with the recommendation as presented by the speakers, we have to ensure that whatever we do is sustainable. The government, the private sector has been taking initiatives, but the sustainability of these initiatives is the main issue. We have to be we have to be innovative. We have to be inclusive, include the private sector. In fact, the private sector should lead these initiatives. We need to create some sort of funds. We have a lot of financing available under the global climate funds, the GCF and other funds which are available. We just need to tap those funds, and the government these initiatives shouldn't be led by the government, wherein we provide giveaways to these communities, and 2 years down the road nothing is working. We have to make them in a way that all the installations are sustainable. As Amisar rightly mentioned, that going forward, transition towards electricity, run appliances, and everything running on electricity is the only solution. We have to convert our cooking, heating, cooling, even the railways going forward, and transportation sector on electricity. Only then can we achieve the desired decrease in price of energy even for the rural areas, even for the urban areas of the country. So I think we, as Aisha mentioned, that the solutions are available. We just need to synchronize the activities between the government and the private sector, put the private sector in the lead, and support the activities being done by the private sector in the form of properly devised regulatory frameworks, and help facilitating them in tapping the funds and such facilities for which they can gain the access and provide solutions to the needy areas of the country. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Shakil sir. I think this it's very, good to hear that government is actually coming up with these reforms, and definitely we have come with very strong targets for the RE as well. And I think, yes, exactly. I think one of the most important points is that it's not just the government. All the other sectors have to play a very important role. The private sector has to actually come in. And I think one of the very major challenges Pakistan has actually faced in its energy sector is its difficulty in perhaps harnessing this international financing, such as these, which kids have also talked about, GCF. Our portfolio is even less than as compared to the smaller countries which have been able to have these financing. So perhaps you also need to build some capacity around those factors as well. So yeah, that's actually one of the very strong needs. So I think with this, I'll actually be going to Ms. Afia Malik. She's currently working as the senior research economist at Pakistan Institute of Development Economics. Right. So Afia, you've been researching a lot on this. So in your perception, what are some of the affordability options in times of this economic turmoil, keeping in view energy as an enigma with no easy solution there? So yes, over to you, Ms. Afia, if you want to highlight any, and please, if you also want to respond to any of the points highlighted by the speakers as well. Thank you. Over to you, Ms. Afia.
Thank you, Abed. No doubt, tariff is rising exponentially, and these tariffs will keep on rising in the absence of deep structural reforms in the power sector, which is basically missing. So making it unaffordable for the general consumers who have access. But in rural areas, either they have zero or limited access, as also mentioned earlier. Secondly, in our policy circles, rural electrification has remained a goal, but there exists no comprehensive policy guideline. Villages get electrified each year, but the absence of system planning due to the lack of comprehensive policy results in the disturbance of low tension and high tension wires ratio, and one of the root causes of technical losses and reliable access to electricity in these areas. Also, the current electricity generation fuel mix, as also mentioned earlier, is expensive because of more than 40% import dependency. And due to the lack of energy market and comprehensive energy planning for the future, coal and RLNG plants will keep Pakistan's reliance on expensive imported fuels in the coming years. So it means continued dependence on imported fuels, meaning tariff will keep on rising. And to suggest to extend the grid to all the poor in the country is not viable, as also mentioned by Amir, technically as well as financially. And also to suggest to continue with the government policy of continued with the subsidized electricity policy for the poor, because subsidy is not actually reaching to the actual poor. So now what needs to be done? Pakistan needs a focus on enabling a deep transformation of the energy sector to scale up decentralized renewables for universal energy access at an affordable rate with clear development targets. And for this, we need a clear and consistent policy followed by a dynamic energy plan that allows for the coexistence and integration of different technologies and system sizes. Over the years, so many policies were announced, but none of them caters the needs of the poor. Most of these policies were crafted to meet special interest groups. So for future, we need a policy and a plan, a very dynamic plan, based on the broad-based consultations with various stakeholders, including the local private sector and civil society organizations, as well as the relevant ministries, which includes health, education, water, agriculture, and subnational governments. Planning should be integrated across various sectors and with a bottom-up approach, catering the needs of such impoverished communities and also gender sensitive. Besides, the focus of energy planning needs to be to unlock the core benefits of areas related to other SDGs, like education, food security, socioeconomic development. And even when we are talking about poor communities, productive use of energy should be an integral part of the energy access strategy. So what we also need is streamlining regulatory requirements to reduce cost, which will allow a balance between reliability and affordability for all. Clear regulatory guidelines tailored to different renewable solutions should be in place. A tailored approach to tariff regulations suitable to local requirement is a must for the viability and sustainability of mini grids or off-grid solutions. And to finance on the finance side, the financial landscape needs to shift towards unlocking local and community-driven financing available from the private sector to generate, distribute, and sell decentralized renewable energy, especially in the remote rural areas. Local involvement in affordable electricity project is the key. And there are several good examples also mentioned by Amir, and here the Jat Sahab is sitting here. He will also mention about the examples of Gilgit, Baltistan, and Chitral, from which we can learn. Now, to conclude, only with inclusive planning as well as high quality data and adequate legal and financial frameworks, Pakistan can set the right path for a deeper transformation towards clean, affordable, and reliable energy for the rural population. This is all from my side. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Ms. Afia. Some very strong and quick recommendations coming in from Ms. Afia, and I think very, very pertinent. And I think, yes, I think I think the key point is that policy making again should have to be centric to the rural communities, and we need to follow this bottom-up modeling approach. So I think with this, we're in a position to discuss what models are being actually practiced and what have been some of the success stories, because we do have Pakistan Poverty Alleviation Fund with us as PAPAF as well, and there are a lot of work in rural electrification side as well. And there's some collaboration going on with different organizations to support this as well. So I'm very glad to say we have been joined by with Ms. Nafees Ahmed Khan Saab, who is currently the specialist of renewable energy at Pakistan Poverty Alleviation Fund. So Nafees Saab, if you could just also highlight some of the initiatives by PAPAF and how do you think these operate in community-based models, which models are actually operating in Pakistan and what are some of the very best practices in this? So yeah, well, thank you so much for joining and over to you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Obed. And I'd like to thank SDPI and UNESCAP and other partners for providing us this opportunity to present achievements, I would say, the efforts and the projects PPF has accomplished so far. As my different distinguished partners, colleagues and speakers, they spoke about the policy and issues, challenges, scope, different financing models that are widely being practiced across the globe. So I would rather focus on what PPF has been doing in off-grid sector. As you may know that PPF is a leading organization working for alleviation of poverty, and I'm heading a renewable energy section in PPF. So since inception, PPF has accomplished and completed, I think, over 3,800 projects, and these are of different capacities, ranging from kilowatts, up to 100 of kilowatts. But again, when we are talking about these distributed generation and the off-grid communities, these projects have very small capacity compared to what we are hear about grid-connected form. So our model is very simple, and as we go along, we'll discuss and see that there are a lot of opportunities around that we need to build on this model. And our model is that in PPF, we have three-tier approach, So we start with the communities, the beneficiary communities, where we are going to implement the project. There we have community organizations. On the top of it, we have village organizations, and then at higher scale, at UC scale, Union Council scale, we have LSO, local support organizations. So these are three-tier, organizations who are ultimate, the beneficiary and the custodian of the projects that we implement and head these over to the communities. And, as we see, the challenges are that, once you implement the project, so ultimately sustainability and long-term, post-implementation mechanism, that's important. We have been hearing about different models like pay-as-you-go, the community managed models, and obviously then there are a lot of models that have been practiced widely. So in our case, like I mentioned, that with the completion of over 3,800 projects with cumulative capacity of around 12 megawatts, so it itself is a big achievement, and we give credit to our partner organizations. PPF has a network of partner organization of over 130 partner organizations, and that in a sense is our strength, and that we are present in nook and corner of our country, and especially focused on alleviating poverty and improving the socio-economic conditions of these beneficiary community. So I would like to also briefly touch about the studies that Mr. Amir Durrani has referred to. Those were PPF for sponsored and funded. And I think we are in a good position. That's our unique strength, like I mentioned, our outreach and a network of partner organizations, that we can scale up these community managed and community owned renewable energy projects. And again, we have a lot of experience because, as I mentioned, the numbers, we have over 1,000 of projects that we have accomplished. And luckily, most of these projects have been working and functional since they have been commissioned. And most recently, we have commissioned and completed KfW-funded renewable energy project. Under this project, we built around 68 very advanced mini and micro solar grids, and 5 micro hydro projects. So these, again, these micro grids were completed in off-grid areas where there was no chance of connecting these villages to the national grid in, let's say, next 10 to 15 years. And these, I am glad to say that these models are perfectly working. So we have to engage the communities. We have formed power committees who look after these projects. There is a tariff, and this tariff is being evolved with consensus of beneficiary communities. So they decide what should be the line rent. So we have 2 parts: the flat part, that's the monthly monthly line rent, we can say. And that's nominal. You can say even at this age, when even the grid connected farms where we are paying 40, 50 rupees. So our communities are getting it at a rate of, let's say, 5 to 7 rupees per kilowatt hour, with the line rent of, let's say, 100. So hardly, they have to pay, let's say, 400, 500, depending on its usage. So I can again say that this is a very successful model, and this has been recognized globally. We have been awarded for these best model project for these kind of projects. These are community owned, again, both for solar and MHPs. So I think as we go, we'll discuss the challenges and other things. You might have other questions that we can build around it.
Sure. Again, thank you so much, Faisal, and congratulations on such wonderful initiatives taken by PAPAF, and also there's some very good success stories. So I think when we talk about these community-based models, there are a lot of models do exist in Pakistan, especially when we go towards the northern areas. There are a lot work being done by PDO as well. So we have been joined by Mohammad Jalsa. He has worked a lot on these models and is actually one of the pioneers of this whole sector. So yeah, so we'll actually be coming towards you. If you could just take us through some of the models that currently, community-based models that currently exist, and what are some of the success stories in that. So yes, over to you, sir. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you, Beth, for inviting me to this wonderful event, which is always close to my heart: Bijli, energy, people, mountains. So before I respond to what you said about the success stories, I just think of, practical actions on the ground. Supplying fossil fuel all the way to those mountains up. Base camp of K2, somewhere, this Rakaposhi and other places. Just imagine. And you have millions and millions of gallons of water is being wasted. And people are using their, they are cutting their fruit trees, the forest trees, the domestic forest trees for heating homes and cooking. Come on. I remember this past 4 decades of Bijli in the mountains. 200 megawatt installed capacity over the past 40 years. And last time we were in KIU, and the government people said we have 700 megawatt of need. 200 installed capacity currently, 700 by those are these. Kis duniya mein yaar? So the off-grid success stories, again, in the 80s, when this community-based rural support program was started, part of the story, Nafis Saab said, very rightly, PPF has put a lot of finances and technical support in supporting all these implementing partners. So in the 80s, we did try a small 5 kilowatt of unit and saying, let us give it a try. My boss was Hussain Wali Khan and said, maybe the community, let us give it a try. Maybe they can manage it. And there were a lot of opposition, but we made this breakthrough. So it, kind of incrementally over the past 4 decades went up to, as Nafis Saab said, 12 megawatt is PPF supported, and AKRSP is around, again, 14 to 15. And PDO, the best thing was, during this past 40 years, the KP government came with a policy decision of saying, okay, this is workable, let us scale it up. It took 40 saal And we were begging this money from donors, from DFID, from Canadians, from other people, USAID people. सबसे कि यार कुछ करते हैं. So it took 4 decades. The KP government in 2014 came up with a policy decision and saying, okay, let us build 356 locations, the small units, community-based units from 15 kilowatt to 500 kilowatt. So it took time. It was a new partnership. It was very difficult at the government level. People are reluctant. Those who are doing all this business are always reluctant. Maybe it's a universal kind of phenomena. Maybe I would be behaving the same thing. Ye kaun aa gaye community wale bijli banane wale. Bijli is linked with WAPDA. WAPDA is, here to supply bijli to every inch of Pakistan. No, things have changed. Look at other people, what they are doing. So a lot of these stories and the innovations, not with the PIDO one. PIDO has we were able to kind of construct around 40 plus mini micro hydros with the help of government of KP, but with other projects, the money from SDC, the money from AKDN, people went with the innovation of saying, let us give it a try for prepaid meters. Could you believe in Chitral, if you go to Yarkun and Laspur, not all over Chitral. Chitral is supplying 108 megawatt down country through the grid, but bijli kharch nahi ho raha hai bhai. I understand the availability, affordability. Why bijli is there, nobody is using it. They are using it for cooking, heating, they are using it for washing, warming water. But commercial activity, unless you link it with the fee subset. Durrani Sab, I remember, we put all our best with the PPF and in other projects as well, doing all this research. People, as you said, Sir Adil Sab, the people in those locations in the far-flung areas, marginalized community, they are paying more than what we are paying. Absolutely. So the need is, the bottom line is, we need to kind of look at those best practices, carry out some studies, research karen, dekhe, and then, scaling it up. We cannot wait. We were able in GB, the government was able, 40 saal, 200 megawatt, and I said it is simple mathematics. The total demand is 700 megawatt. With this pace, it will take 300 years to achieve 700 megawatt bijli. We can't wait. Your glaciers will be gone. People are traveling to the northern, you are most welcome to come there, but look at the carbon. Look at the kind of damage and a lot of potential, a lot of hope is there, a lot of good things are happening in Pakistan, but we need to be quick and documenting and disseminating and upscaling so that it benefits the people of Pakistan and the people and the planet as well. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you so much, Ajay. I think, yes, some very good points highlighted, and I think just link it again to Sardar Hayat Saab from Pakistan Pakhtunkhwa Energy Development Organization. Sardar Bhai, if you could just also highlight how actually PIDO actually worked on all these points and what have been and how they actually, because there's a very good engagement model of PIDO with NGOs such as AKRSP as well. So yeah, so over to you, Sardar Bhai. Thank you. If you could just come in and let us explain what some of the models are there, what success have been, and more, I think one very important point, Sardar Bhai, would be if you could also highlight that what challenges is PIDO still facing in scaling it further as well. So over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth. Thank you, SDPI and the team for inviting PIDO again on our platform, which is a point of interest for the whole country and specifically for the Pakhtunkhwa Energy Development Organization nowadays. Much have been said by the worthy speakers previously and the policy challenges and what the business model they have in place previously. Much have been discussed and explained well, but I will briefly go through my points that the impoverished regions of Pakistan normally, they are located in far-flung communities. They are located in far-flung communities and providing them with power with the conventional methods is always expensive, added with several challenges every now and then. So the optimal way is to provide them with off-grid solutions, and PIDO in this respect has got some good success stories in the past. And what the previous lead discussed, that it took almost 4 decades for the KP government to took a policy decision in this regard. But I would explain that in 80s and 90s, the then Shadow has got some initiatives in the form of around 10 to 12 mini micro hydel stations, which worked for almost 2 decades successfully. And amongst those 8 to 9, still we are, I think AKRSP and SRSP are operating around 3 to 4 in Kohistan and Swat region. So it is almost, I would say that for 4 decades, though the units have been rehabilitated 2 or 3 times, but the initiative which was taken back in 80s and 90s is still operating, and with the success stories. Back in 2015 and 16, 2 communities in Chitral region and 2 communities in southern district of the KP have been electrified through off-grid solar solutions, and since then it is also working as a success story and successfully operating the households these off-grid solutions. Similarly, phase 1 of the MHPs, which was around 356, but currently we are having 316, which have been commissioned and handed over to the communities with a cumulative capacity of around 32 megawatt in far-flung areas. And most of them are operating with the help of AKRSP and SRSP and some other NGOs successfully. But as you said earlier, that the challenges what we are facing in this model, that the community-based organization what we created in the communities, those were not that much successful what we were thinking. The handling issues, the O&M of the powerhouses and the units were a bit different, and from them it was difficult to handle the greater capacity, that 300 to 500 kilowatt systems. So those we are operating through the NGOs, and the small capacity units, they are operating at self by the communities, but still they have got some challenges. And with this, we have devised for the second phase, which will encompass around 672 units with a cumulative capacity of 56 megawatt in these far-flung regions. And for that, we have devised a business model, which can be shared with the STPI in detail, as we will get it from the its PMU, and we will share with the SDPI for further strengthening this business model. So we have done much in this sector through off-grid solar solutions and off-grid community-based mini micro hydel power stations with AKRSP, SRSP, and with the help of some other NGOs in this sector. And this was from my side. Thank you so much. Thank you, SDPI, once again for arranging this type of discussions every now and then. Thank you, Abed.
Yes, thank you so much, Sattabhai. I think on behalf of SDP, I would really like to see the business models that the feeder has actually offered. So yeah, I'll definitely get in touch with you. So again, thank you so much, Sattasab. Very good business models and work being done by the feeder, I think. With this, I think one of the very key challenges I think Pakistan faces in supplying energy access is the region of Balochistan, because that's where we do have very low grid electricity access as well. So I think we have been joined by Safdar Hussain Saab, who's currently working as the co-director of Institute of Development Studies and Practices from Balochistan. And I think IDSP has, Safdar Saab, done some very good work in coming up with this renewable energy model of off-grid solutions as well in Balochistan. So yeah, I think we're discussing this with you a couple of weeks back as well. So Safdar Saab, if you could just highlight some of the key areas or new models that you've actually come up with, and yeah, how do you actually propose a way forward coming from the whole perspective of Balochistan as well? So yeah, over to you, Safdar. Thank you. Safdar Saab, you're not audible. Yes, over to you. We can see you, but you're not audible. Safdar Saab, you're audible. You can speak. Please, Sadasha, if you could just unmute yourself and yes, please. I think perhaps we can circle back to Sabdasab, I guess. So I think now when we talk about this point, a very key pertinent, I think one of the very key important points that have been raised by many speakers is how to actually address the whole financing challenge here as well. So I think we have been joined by the banking sector here as well. We have Mr. Waqas Mahmood, the head of risk policy at the Bank of Punjab. So Waqas, if you will now come to you, if you could just highlight how the banking sector is actually working in this whole domain, and what challenges do you actually perceive in going forward ahead with the support of these energy models in the rural communities of Pakistan? So yes, over to you, Waqas. Thank you.
Thanks, Subhath, for inviting me to such a wonderful panel. Before I would like to directly answer your question that how the banking sector would support the offtake of community-based renewable energy solutions, I would like to discuss few key statistics with the audience. Pakistan as a country have a contribution of less than 1% in greenhouse emissions at global level, but unfortunately, we are out of top 10 countries that have been badly impacted because of the climate change. Referring to the recent past, Pakistan suffered losses of $40 billion just in a year of 2022 because of the devastating floods that have directly impacted the lives of 2.3 million people. And at the same time, we are the country which are facing the economic challenges, and we are negotiating an economic package of just $7 to $8 billion with an IMF, and are facing various type of challenges in the closure of that package. So looking at the key and the ground realities, we should focus on that the significance of renewable energy for the survival of the Pakistan is paramount in the years to come. There is also a need to consider a few statistics that I want to share with the audience, is that as a part of our alternate and renewable energy policy of 2019, we had settled the targets that by 2025, 25% contribution should be from the renewable energy segment, and it would go up to 30% by 2030. But as of now, our entire contribution from the renewable energy is hovering at less than 5%. If we look at the installed capacity of power segment, 1.4% is just the contribution from solar PV solutions. With the help of State Bank of Pakistan, since 2016, when they have introduced a scheme of subsidized financing for the renewable energy under various phases, 72 billion rupees were lent by the banking sector of Pakistan in various renewable energy schemes. If I talk about the Bank of Punjab, we had our portfolio of around 32 billion rupees, and we are the first bank in Pakistan which has invested in Quaid-e-Azam solar power project of 100 megawatt that has paved the way for the installation of solar energy solutions in Pakistan. If I talk about the ground reality, in 2015, we don't have even any solar collection data center available in Pakistan, and it was in 2016 that in Bahawalpur we have installed the first solar irradiation data center. And from there onwards, the country have more than 500 megawatts of solar energy projects where we had invested more than $5 billion. $1 billion were directly related to the solar PV solutions. Now, without taking much of the time, I would like to discuss the way forward. Being a banking sector representative, there are 2 and 3 challenges which I would like to discuss with the audience. The first one is the cost of renewable energy equipment, particularly the solar panels. The second one, when we look at the projects of up to 20 megawatts or 50 megawatts pertaining to solar energy, the second challenge which we face as a banker is the availability of dollars, because we are already facing the scarcity of foreign exchange. The third one is the legislative challenges which we are facing with respect to net metering and the transfer of energy from one point to another in the shape of cycling. So the solution here for the first challenge is that we should, as a country, negotiate with the IMF and other institutions who are providing the financial assistance to Pakistan in these times, that there should not be any curbs and cuts on the availability of subsidized financing, which is available only for the promotion of renewable energy in the country. Because with this, there is a need at the end of the State Bank of Pakistan and the government, along with the financial institution, to promote those measures and introduce those financial schemes and financial innovation that would be helpful in the transfer of technology, so that we would be manufacturing the solar panels and other allied renewable energy equipment locally, so that we can conserve our foreign exchange and the equipment would be available at a much cheaper rates to the end consumer. And this would be directly helpful in increasing the landscape for the implementation of solar energy and achieving the settled policy targets of improving the energy mix up to 25% by 2025 and up to 30% by 2030, where we are lagging with a great margin. The second thing is for the community-based rural energy solutions. I have an idea that we should promote captive renewable energy parks, because once the financing is available at a cheaper rates for those who are manufacturing equipment locally, then the financing would be available for the commissioning and establishment of that community-based parks in the rural areas of Pakistan. The third one is where the AEDB, CPPA, NEPRA should show some flexibility in introducing some legislative measures that allows the public-private partnership, where the rates of the per unit electricity cost should be allowed to be supplied to the end consumer at a rate competitive than the national grid electricity rates, so that the burden on the local masses should reduce significantly. With the help of that, financial inclusion and financial products should be available not only for those who are engaged in the manufacturing of renewable energy equipment, but also for those industrialists who are manufacturing smart equipments which are utilizing lesser electricity in the shape of fans, LEDs, water pumps, etc. So this is the entire vertical chain where the financial inclusion and innovation and product development needs to be in place. And the banks are more than willing, because I would like to discuss that State Bank of Pakistan has recently introduced their guidelines for environmental and social risk management, and all the banking industry of Pakistan were given the targets to implement the same latest by 2024. So we had already defined our sustainable development goals, where we not only as an organization or as a financial institution wants to reduce our carbon footprints, but we also wants to facilitate the community, for which the availability of cheaper financing and its proper utilization is paramount. This is from my side. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much for Kasab. Again, a lot of inputs, and thank you for highlighting the way forward from the banking perspective as well. I think, I mean, it's just what we have been actually looking at very different studies, and I think this economic turmoil that Pakistan is going through, it's also actually one of the challenges, because we did solve SPP's financing scheme, challenges with SPP financing scheme. So I think we can, at the same time, we can also take the inputs from Mohsen Purputo Saab, who's currently working at the JS Bank, and I think JS Bank has been is also one of the banks. JS Bank also was one that actually started the project with the GCF as well, and have been actually supporting a lot of these initiatives. So Mohsen Saab is currently working as a lead sustainability initiative as well as of the GCF projects at JS Bank. So Mohsen Saab, if you could also perhaps highlight that along with your interventions, that is there any current scheme or facility by the banks that can actually be used for these small scale or community based models, or any other perhaps in these sector, anything that can be financed using those, and what initiatives is JS Bank actually taking to address this, and also perhaps some of the challenges coming from your side as well. Says over to you, Mohsen Saab.
Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Thank you for inviting JS Bank as one of the speakers for this our discussion. Like after hearing everybody, a lot of statistics have been put forth, and I'll just make it quite short and let you know about our initiatives and what we can do in the future to promote renewable energy within Pakistan. So in terms of JS Bank, we are one of the first or the only commercial banks who have been accredited with the Green Climate Fund. And we took the initiative to develop a project for solar solutions or for the promotion of renewable energy. So we currently are implementing implementing this project, which is simply put allowing JS Bank to provide solar financing or solar solutions to all of the first marginalized communities, underprivileged societies, and as well as main three segments that we're looking into. For example, one of the segments that one of the differences with other commercial banks for JS Bank is we focused more on distributed solar rather than providing creating big projects that are more than 1 megawatt or 100 megawatts, so on and so forth. We wanted to distribute solar to the masses, and therefore we have one of the largest residential solar portfolio within Pakistan. And I think in order to promote renewable energy from the financing sector, one of the key things that happened in the past is that we had a USAID guarantee facility available, which was used by a couple of other banks as well. And along with State Bank's refinancing scheme, which was a concessionalized financing scheme at 6% of providing solar solutions to the residential, agri, and SME sector. When you combine both of these two instruments, where the bank has some sort of a backstop through reducing credit risk and as well as providing liquidity in terms of concessional financing, the offtake is really well. So because of our past experience, therefore we developed a project with Green Climate Fund, which is a total of $10 million project. That will be $10 million funding will be coming from GCF, and through that we'll be leveraging it and providing solar financing of up to $44 million in the next 10 years. And since this is a project co-developed by the Green Climate Fund as well, they've got a lot of environmental social safeguards that we have to take into account, and we have to create mitigation plans for that. So in that aspect, when we talk about gender mainstreaming, we have one of the we have created a gender action plan that will eventually help out the communities within the agriculture sector and within the residential sector, where we would like to give financing to women-led businesses and women-led households. Therefore, I think in the future, if State Bank still allocates more liquidity or concessional financing in terms of solar financing, I think that will create the way forward. But even if you look at the electricity tariffs currently, they've been going up exponentially. And looking at the financing rates or KIBOR rates, if we compare both of them together, the payback period is still less than 5 years. So I think it's still a good thing to do as well in terms of providing energy financing to the masses. So yeah, thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. I think yes, I completely agree with the role that SPB has also to play in this, and I think very, very good initiatives by JS Bank. So I think we'll be actually having a very dedicated discussion on financing for RE in the rural areas as well. So yes, again, thank you so much for highlighting this as well. As we move towards perhaps the way forward and the key recommendations, I think we do have a lot of speakers. We do have a couple of speakers. Dr. Abdul Ahmed will be highlighting, and I think perhaps we can also go to a round of key recommendations coming in from the panelists who have also speakers have also heard about the debate and have already given the intervention. So perhaps highlighting what could be the key points we should take forward with this while we're actually looking at the overall theme of addressing the energy poverty. So I think perhaps just starting with Dr. Abir Ahmed. Dr. Abir Ahmed, after, looking at the discussion that has all actually happened over here, and what do you think are some of the multidimensionality of energy poverty in the region, and particularly at the household level, and how do you actually, you have done a lot of research in this area, so how do you think we should actually, again, we've already discussed very recommendations and how we actually have to go forward, but anything that you would like to highlight that has not been either discussed at this platform, and or anything that is particularly very important to be highlighted here.
Okay,
So,
Assalamu
yes,
alaikum. Thank you. Can I share my screen, please? There is a
yes, Dr. Abir, but I would request you, yes, to keep it a bit short. Yes, thank you.
Okay, sure. I'll just quickly move. Okay. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you, first of all, STPI, for inviting me to this roundtable discussion on fostering solutions for energy transition that is green, that is affordable, and inclusive. So this is Dr. Abir Ahmed Kuratulan from University of Gujarat. So as we are already discussing, the agenda is to reflect on the current crisis and focus on those regions which are, as per the title suggests, impoverished. So, but we have to think about that impoverished from which point of view. Are they impoverished economically? Maybe they have the resources available, but they don't have the access and availability of those energy resources which we are demanding them to move to or to transit to. Then if they have the availability of those resources, are they affordable? That is another aspect. So we have to figure out that impoverished from which aspect we are trying to focus on those communities. Then the topic of this theme, which I am in, that I have to discuss the opportunities and way forward. So we need to, first of all, identify that energy transition has different goals. It could have been that we want to move from less efficient fuels to the efficient ones. We want to save economic savings, that we want to move to those fuels which are considered low cost. Environmental goals, that this specific energy transition we are talking about, that is mainly to attain some environmental goals to move from polluting fossil fuels to modern green fuels. So the question comes to the mind that a household in an impoverished region or underserved or unserved region of Pakistan, on what factors that household decides to consume the energy. So maybe as we are talking and discussing, so maybe most of the people in those regions, they don't have that bare minimum supply of energy available, even if they do have resources, and they might not think about the environmental goals. So there are multiple way forwards that we have to focus on. So I assume that the impoverished regions will be the rural areas of Pakistan or far-flung areas of Pakistan, and mainly in the provinces of Balochistan and Sindh, where the multidimensional energy poverty rates are already very high, and the transition is going to be more challenging based on the accessibility and affordability indicators. The data shows what we have in terms of primary energy from low carbon resources. Pakistan is not attaining that number or that percentage that it is being expected from. So green, affordable and inclusive energy. So gradual shift to cleaner fuel usage by the impoverished sectors. This is the objective of green energy transition. Local, in my opinion, the way forward should be the local renewable solutions, as already most of the speakers have mentioned many valid and great successful experiences of off-grid options. And we also think about that those off-grid options, are they going to be sustainable? Are they going to provide the masses of those regions a reliable and affordable supply for longer duration? This might not be the case that they are only available for a few years, or by the time they are being subsidized or some foreign funding is available for running those operations, then they are okay for the people that they are willing to accept those. And afterwards, when they become expensive, so people might not be, might switch back. There can be a reverse energy transition phenomena by the public. Pricing of energy from renewable resources, again, is very important, as our other distinguished speakers have mentioned, that cost of renewable energy sources is still very high, especially the infrastructure required to get benefit from the renewable energy available. So subsidy possible or not. We have many people here from the financing banking sector, and they have suggested that financing options are available. Then government organizations are also supporting those organizations who want to shift from, want to provide energy through using renewable energy resources. But what about after the subsidy is going to be taken away? So the planning is really important. The way forward is basically, I will come down to those solutions that we need to have planning, that we should not, we are talking about not to leave all those people behind who are impoverished. We want to take all the regions together. We want to have an inclusive energy transition. We don't want our urban sectors only to get benefit from the energy transition phenomena. And definitely global and environmental challenges are not going to differentiate between urban and rural areas. So what we can do, so this is my humble suggestion. This is a model, role model, which is not used in economics or in energy sector, but this is some procedure to set and achieve goals. So we have to identify where we have to go, what are the realities around us, what are the options, obstacles, and opportunities we might face on the way, and what our will is to what way forward we can adopt. So either we might get stuck in this phenomena, energy transition, energy diversification, that some of the distinguished speakers in the start of this roundtable discussion, they mentioned that a single region cannot adopt, or we cannot move in a linear mode, that we are totally leaving one of the energy source and moving to the other one. So we are kind of diversifying. We have to opt for different options, different scenarios, and that energy transition should be sustainable. Pakistan energy transition target is still not being met. 30% renewable energy target for electric sector. We want to attain it until 2030. But how to attain that goal? We have to identify the goal, and then how we have to measure the realities, what is going on around us, what capital investment is required, is it available? And especially talking about the public-private partnerships and private sector involvement in terms of investment. So private sector definitely looks into the return part of it. But as we have heard from the state bank regulations and banking sector coming forward with their solutions and options, so it might be available. Mindset of consumers is again another challenge which has to be faced, that people are not willing to accept that some of our distinguished speakers have said कि कौन लोग आ गए हैं, कहाँ से आ गए हैं, वो आपदा का काम है. But still we have to convince them that this is going to be something you need, and this is going to be a better solution for your future, for your kids, for your children. Stakeholders should realize the long-term importance of energy transition, which currently can be a challenge. Then we have other economic issues faced by those impoverished population, people living in those areas. Economic instability is there, inflation is there. So reducing emission levels or moving to a cleaner fuel in terms of energy transition is not the priority of the masses. They want electricity. They want to cook their meals. They want to have some basic supply of energy continuously available, which is not there, unfortunately. So obstacles, opportunities, we need an investment. This is an obstacle, but the opportunities that are there, that we can convince them, we can create investment opportunities, we can convince the people that employment generation will result as a result of these projects when they're going to be operational. Then low cost options, when those are available, people or economic decision making is always keeping in mind the cost and prices part of it. So when these are available to them and the price is not matched, so definitely people will move to the low cost options, even if they are the fossil fuels. So the failure to convince investors that future returns on green investments are going to be high. Transportation issues of excess green energy, that some of the speakers that also mentioned that we have energy, we are producing it, but we are not able to use it. We are not able to shift it to those areas which are energy deficient. So the excess amount of energy is not able to be used. High conversion cost for storage and transportation, high capital cost. But what are the opportunities available? We can capitalize on local renewable energy resource usage, investment in production of such technologies which are using renewable energy resources and which are storing them. We can have new initiatives for inclusivity at the national and local levels. Means we have to involve people, we have to involve those who are involved, who are the stakeholders. So what is our way forward? Finance generation, stakeholder participation, then co-ownership. This is one of the things which I want to emphasize, that people should be involved. We should have partnerships with the locals so that they take ownership of that project, and later on when those international organizations or the people who have taken the initiative, they want to hand it over to the people for its sustainable continuation, so that can be possible. And then again, capitalize on the green transition means that employment generation, the associated fields, associated businesses which are going to be there when the renewable energy projects are running. So those should be encouraged. Training and skill development in such areas should be there. So we have to identify then small scale projects are the way forward. Local level energy access, secure and stable supplies, local job creation, ownership. So all this will definitely give us an opportunity to move towards green, inclusive and affordable energy transition process. And especially we will be able to include those which might not understand or which might not have those resources available to get benefit from this energy transition and save themselves from the future climate calamities. So thank you from my side, and I hope that I have tried to cover all.
Thank you so much, Dr. Priyama. I think some wonderful suggestions coming in, also charting a way forward. But again, I'm just taking a bit quick, just in the interest of time. So I think I mean, a lot have been discussed, and I'll also be requesting speakers to highlight if they have any key points to further highlight over here as well, and any further comments as well. But I think before that, Anis, you have been listening to all this debate, and you have been the key lead person in developing the SDG 7 roadmap of Pakistan from SCAP's end. So you do understand the whole platform and the area we're dealing with. So after this discussion, if I could actually request you to come up with some of the key points that you have actually taken up, and what areas do you actually perceive should be some very key focus points. And yes, if you would just show some reflections from your end as well. So again, yes, thank you so much for joining us, Anis. And yeah, apologies for keeping you a bit waiting, but yeah, completely understand we're 5 minutes off the time. Thank you. So over to you.
Thank you very much, Ubaid. Can you hear me?
Yes, you're perfectly audible.
Thank you. And thank you for inviting me to say a few words in this very important session. Actually, I enjoyed all through. And I must say that in doing so, as you mentioned, I will try to do a summary of the discussion. Actually, I heard throughout the whole session, and I was absolutely delighted listening to all those wonderful discussions and very useful insights provided by all these experts. So to begin with, as Dr. Hassan Daud and Mr. Michael Williamson mentioned in the beginning, that this roundtable has been very timely when Pakistan's energy sector has been facing an array of challenges, including lack of access to energy services that inhibiting productivity and quality of life of impoverished regions, and severe impacts of climate change. This discussion also greatly links with the SDG 7 roadmap, Ubaid, as you mentioned in the beginning, that ESCAP and Government of Pakistan have jointly developed this roadmap. And the roadmap rightly pointed out this issue, highlighting the fact that about 7% of population do not have access to any kind of electricity, whereas only 77% of population had access to grid electricity. We can see that 7% might seem to be a very small number, but when it comes to Pakistan, it equates to about 16 million people. I think that's a very large number. Access to modern energy and green energy also connects to access to clean cooking fuels and technologies. And when we look at that issue, we can see that only 50% of Pakistan's population have access. So overall, the discussion topic today is very, very important. It was good to see that today's discussion revolved around two main areas, which are very important. The first one being the impact of lack of access to modern energy and how this can be addressed. We have heard speakers raising concerns for rural people, the issue of quality, the quality of life, the issue of equity, the gender, and so on. It was very useful to see speakers breaking their immense experiences from the ground. For example, how the lack of access to electricity is hampering the lifestyle of mountainous community. Against all those odds, we also have learned many good examples of how small-scale projects are offering access to energy to impoverished communities. And the second point that I noticed actually was that how renewable and green energy come into play to address this important issue. Renewable energy is not only is a decentralized system, which even the previous speaker was pointing out to the small scale energy supply systems, but it is much cheaper now when we compare that with its fossil fuel counterpart. Plus, it also helps to improve energy security and creates more jobs per unit of capacity installation. We have heard some good suggestions on how the policy and governance system can be developed. Those will be important as we move forward. Lastly, when it comes to implementation, the private sector investment is critical. The public finance is not sufficient to make all those investments. So this method too has been very well outlined in some of the discussions, including I heard some speakers from the private bank sector. So overall, the discussion today was absolutely brilliant and useful. I'm sure SDPI will make good use of these wonderful reflections. With this, on behalf of ESCAP, I would like to express sincere gratitude to all who have participated and contributed in this discussion. A big thank you to the SDPI team for formulating and coordinating this roundtable so nicely. And thanks to you, Ubaid, specifically for your brilliantly moderating this session. So I'll probably stop there, and that's all from my side. Over to you, Ubaid.
Yes, thank you so much, and it's very good reflections, and you have picked up some very extremely important points here. So I think if I could just open, we do have another intervention from Meher. She will be also talking about some of the aspects going in from the transgender community and how we can address that. But I think that before that, if we have any other suggestions or recommendations or comments by any of our speakers here in the room. So yes, if anyone would like to add anything, perhaps BPAF or ADB, yes, the shouts have anything perhaps to add at this point. Yes, so please, over to you.
So thank you once again. Just a small point. I think we are missing that energy efficiency and renewable energy. These are both complementary, and for better results, I think we need to complement the renewable energy deployment with energy efficient appliances as well.
Yes, perfectly. So I think with this, I'll be coming to you, Asad Saab, just after Meher. So Meher, you have been working a lot around how the concerns of the transgender community should be further upscaled. So yeah, perhaps if you want to highlight a couple of points here as well. Just Meher, I would request you to be very, very, very brief. Sorry, thank you.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I am just going to briefly talk about the transgender community in Pakistan, the ways in which they are affected by climate change, and the measures that might be taken to integrate them into discussions surrounding green, affordable, and inclusive energy access. So we are all aware of how climate change disproportionately affects gender minorities, such as women, and how they bear the brunt of the disastrous effects of a climate crisis. However, this same framework can be applied to the transgender community as they are also a minority group. Due to the taboo and the prejudice surrounding transgender people in Pakistan, they have low rates of education, they face discrimination in workplaces, and are often forced to resort to other means of income. Due to these factors, they often live in rural areas with poor infrastructures. And these are the places that are most severely affected by climate disasters. Also then, after a disaster, they are unlikely to receive aid or shelter of any kind. So we can see how they are already at a disadvantage when it comes to electrical resources, but after a crisis, they are completely cut off from access to energy services. So what should be done and what can be done to fix this? Firstly, I think we need to recognize how pre-existing social inequalities determine who is going to be the most vulnerable group to a climate crisis and to a lack of energy resources. These vulnerable groups, such as the transgender community, are treated unfairly when it comes to environmental protection, policies, and decision-making. So these discriminatory norms and practices, they need to be removed to move towards sustainable energy initiatives that are actually aiming for gender equality. Also, when we aim to fix a problem regarding a certain group of people, it is also necessary to ensure that those group of people also have a seat at the table with stakeholders and policymakers, because it is their contribution that is going to be the most effective. So basically, transgender representation in energy-linked jobs is vital. And just to summarize what I'm trying to say, basically, when sustainable energy becomes widely viewed in political circles as not just an ecological issue, but also as a matter of human rights and thus transgender rights, I think that is what can open the door for budgeting, follow-on actions, and policy reforms.
Yes.
That is all from my side. Thank you so much
for rightly summarizing up. I think just very quickly going to Asad Mahmood Saab as well. So yeah, Asad Saab, we have been discussing a lot about different models of RE that are being practices, what challenges are coming up, and yes, what needs to be the way forward. So yeah, perhaps you could also sort of conclude this discussion, after which I'll be going to Dr. Khalid for his final vote of thanks. Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much. As you know, the enhanced transparency framework is just coming up, in which under the Paris Agreement, Pakistan has to report their national adaptation measures and the mitigation measures. Whatsoever they have been committed, they have to be justified and evidences have to be given. So under Article 7, just like Meher mentioned about post-disaster rehabilitation, and Pakistan is facing that brunt and disasters. So integrating SDG 7 from their rehabilitation and making it by default aspect into the post-disaster rehabilitation and recovery services should be the key priority. And then definitely the energy poverty is the term which everybody is now going to face, or somehow we are into it because of the rising prices of electricity. So that is the thing where we need to look upon the generation mixes, things like that, the data availability. Just like if we talk about last year, So we should have that day information about that day or that month in which Pakistan generated the maximum energy from electricity from the clean resources, including hydro. And so there are certain reports, but from where the public can access, just like we keep on disseminating information about other countries, that country has have reached 100% renewable. So there are certain days or months or time intervals which Akhil Saab also would supplement that, where we have the maximum share of, if we take hydro as renewables or clean source, so we have that highest share as well in some part time of the year, like in August last year, or where hydro is maximum and other things are there, wind and solar. So that is another aspect to it. Energy poverty is the key term. Integration of SDG and Article 7 in terms of Pakistan is the priority is being given to those adaptation measures, and we need to expedite because on national level only 54 countries have submitted the national adaptation plans as of now to UNFCCC. So Pakistan is in the process of making it, but our two provinces have taken the leap in it, two states, you can say KPK and GB have developed their adaptation action plans. And under those plans and mitigation measures, whatsoever have been discussed, many of these things are tagged as their targets. So once we are going to develop those documents in line of the Paris Agreement, your NDC, your local adaptation plan, and this next step tool and this intervention of the community-based, because we have to rely on the localized knowledge of every community. That is, we miss every time. So localized knowledge is very much essential for the sustainability of off-grid electricity projects being managed by the community for the community in an effective way. And we have best success stories about it, our AKRSP and other.
Yes.
So I'll conclude over here.
Yes, over to you, Dr. Hasan. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everybody. My job is to give you a vote of thanks. I would do it with highlighting some of the key talk with every speaker. Starting with Dr. Hasan. Dr. Hasan mentioned that energy access and affordability, it is not a policy issue anymore. It is human rights issue. We need to look into that. It has some direct linkages with human aspects of the life. People-centric approach is needed. Michael very rightly mentioned that we need to leave nobody behind. Michael also mentioned Thomas Piketty's injustice. I would mention that Thomas Piketty's latest book, that is The Brief History of Equality, it mentioned that inequality in its new form, it is climatic inequality. We need to look into that, and renewable energy is the solution to that as well. We need to take into account social justice through renewable energy. Durrani Saab very elaboratively, very comprehensively mentioned that we need to use underserved and unserved communities. Policy, politics, and technological issues he mentioned. Vicious circle of energy poverty. Miss Aisha mentioned that, and that is the key takeaway, I guess, that is we need to take into account the social, economic, ecological, and democratic equity if we want to solve this problem that there is injustice in impoverished regions. Then there is the role of women in energy. We need to put our respectable women and not only in policy making, but in consultations like this. Akhil Jafri Saab rightly mentioned that there is a merger of ADB and PPIB, which will be very helpful in developing renewable energy technologies. Ms. Afia mentioned that local private sector led dynamic policy solutions. That was very helpful. Nafis Saab said, thank you so much for the work that PPF is being doing. You mentioned 3-tier system, that is community, village, and local support organization. That was very helpful. The Jat Saab said, thank you so much for your wonderful work. You linked electricity consumption with commercial activities. PIDO, we are very much looking forward to receive financial models. Banks, Bank of Punjab, Yes Bank, thank you so much for your support as always. Dr. Abrar Ahmed mentioned that GROW model, that was very helpful. Goals, reality, options, and will, yes, that is the key thing.
that if there is a will, there is a way. Meher, this part is very neglected all the time, that we need to take into account the marginalized section of our society, transgenders as well. Thank you so much, everybody. My 2 cents would be that we need to empower our local governments as well. We need to devolve our power, not just in legal system, but in power sector as well. We need devolution in that system as well, so that we can have community-based solution, community grids and distributed generation. With this, thank you so much, UNSCAP. Thank you so much, SDPI again, and thank you so much, all of you. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much, everyone. Was I think wonderful discussion.
Obed, can I just add few comments, please? Just few recommends. Yeah.
We always like to
Yeah. So just, I mean, wonderful discussion and discourse. I think we've set some very good pertinent recommendations, and I mean, the scope was excellent, but I just would like to submit a case study, for instance. For me, being the former CEO of KP Board of Investment, for me, 2 sectors were very critical. A is mining and the other one was tourism. So if you bring in renewable energy in those off-grid solutions and provide them for these youngster startups and even people who want to enter from, say, Punjab and rest of the world and go into KP and go into mining, because in areas where some of the great mines are available, natural resources, the access to energy and of course road infrastructure is very poor. So if we provide electricity off-grid solution, cheaper off-grid solution to them, we can transform our mining sector, we can transform our tourism sector, and perhaps look at the aspect of transgender and equality in that aspect. Secondly, if you could also add for policy recommendations, we have our colleagues here. I think in next phase of CPEC, in the energy part, because energy, I think renewable energy and the transition, and we need Chinese support also in this, maybe not just in terms of technology, but also in terms of financing. And also their new initiative of Global Development Initiative, which speaks about a lot of renewable energy. So I think there also on CPEC, next phase, we should, while we look at our indigenous resources, renewables by far should be the key deliverable as far as and that too off-grid solutions for areas where we do not have great. I mean, it's shameful even to say that areas in GB still are off-grid. This is shameful, but still, I mean, we live in a society where we have challenges and discriminations. So I would request कि ये आप 2 recommendations जरूर इसमें add कर लीजिए.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hassan. I think for CPEC will always come to you. So again, thank you so much, everyone. I think we'll continue discussion over perhaps if needed over the lunch as well. So yes, again, thank you so much. I think perhaps we'll take you. Thank you.